This design, assuming we've done it right, could yield you $1.2 million a year of tax-free distributions starting 16 years from now. And if we did it right with a peak collateral of just over $1 million, assuming these assumptions are correct. But how we got there was using properly applied leverage. Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. And here are the 4 arbitrages we often talk about, and this has got to be what you're thinking about in order for premium finance. 1, you can make more money on your money, right? You're good at making money with your money, so you can make more with it leaving it invested than the cost of borrowing it from a bank. And right now we're getting the bank rates between 5.6 to 6.3%, kind of in that range. Second arbitrage is over the long term. The index crediting method tied to the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ has a 0% floor, will outpace the cost of bank financing. And I did another video on this if you want to see that, the relationship between interest rates from the bank and crediting rates from the policy. I talk about historical rates, I talk about historical borrowing rates, so you can take a look at that video if you want. And then the third arbitrage is that the fact that you're not having to earn the money to pay the tax to then pay the premium. These premiums, because they're being provided by the lender, are tax-free loans. And so you don't have to pay the premiums with after-tax dollars. And the fourth arbitrage, as always, is the death benefit is always going to be in excess of the loan balance, and your death benefit to your beneficiaries is income tax-free, and if properly structured, estate tax-free. This is why the power of properly applied leverage in premium finance can be a very solid design for you. The last slide, if I can get to it, is right here. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall be able to move the world. So this is what your design looks like. Assuming we've structured it the right way, we are looking at, and I'll start at the end and come backwards, a payment of $140,000 a year for 10 years, which is 10% of the premium amount. We can adjust that number. Just know the more we pay, the more it pays down the loan. The less we pay out of pocket, the more we're borrowing from the bank. And so it just kind of changes the economics a little bit. And we have a peak projected collateral of pretty much $1 million, right at $1 million, over $1 million for the first 5 years. And that could change depending on how interest rates and interest crediting rates perform and react. Again, go back to that video that I'm talking about so you can take a look at that. But we need to make sure this is within your collateral capacity and your affordability range. But listen, if we can do this the right way and the way we structured it for others, we're looking at a potential of $1.2 million a year of income tax-free distributions for the rest of your life, which is substantial at your age, right? As a 39-year-old, soon to be 40-year-old, at age 55 to get $1.2 million a year income tax-free, not too shabby. And then you've got the death benefit net of the loan over here in column 15. Over to the right. But to put that in comparison, you could do a term insurance policy. If you did a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year term insurance policy, this with Pacific Life, you're going to be anywhere between $18,000 to $54,000, $18,000 a year for 10 years, $30,000 a year for 20 years, $54,000 a year for 30 years. And remember, less than 2% of all term insurance policies have ever paid a death claim. I did a video on that topic as well. You can look at that. As term insurance in the right place, or is it a scam? Depends on what we're doing it from a long-term perspective, from a tax benefit perspective, from a permanent standpoint, it is not the answer. And so that's why wealthy individuals then look at permanent policies. And there's 3 types. There's indexed universal life, whole life, and then variable universal life. Those are the different types of permanent policies. But if the goal was to match the $1.2 million a year of distributions, then in order to fund self-pay and fund those policies the right way, you'd have to put in nearly $781,000 a year into the index universal life, and that was the less expensive of the different options we ran. From a whole life perspective, if we're just focusing on a $25 million death benefit chassis, the same as we did with the IULs and the term life as well as in the premium finance structure, you can't get in enough money. You would have to get a much higher death benefit. But if you want to pay $1.6 million a year out of pocket for 10 years, then you could probably get somewhere around $960,000 a year with their assumptions. Or you could look at the finance design of paying $140,000 a year for $1.2 million. right? And then the last comparison is going to be the variable universal life. Same thing. Variable has very little guarantees relative to the features and benefits that it provides. They might have some options that minimize market volatility, but really still no guarantees. For $933,000 a year for 10 years, you could possibly get to that $1.2 million a year. Again, nothing's perfect. Nothing is going to be the silver bullet. Everything has its pros and cons, and we need to have a discussion where we can talk through what those pros and cons are. But assuming we've gotten your information right and assuming we've structured it the right way, what we're looking at here is a very solid design. Again, we have to make sure that column 12, out-of-pocket payments, is within your affordability guidelines. Column 14, your collateral, also in your affordability guidelines. And I really have three things that I want to do. I need to make sure it happens when I talk to anybody, but when we get on our phone call, one, need to make sure you understand everything about the structure, the good, the bad, the ugly. Two, make sure you can qualify for the structure, both from a carrier perspective and a lender perspective. And three, affordability. Make sure we can afford it. Make sure all of this is within your overall general portfolio. This is a different asset class in your portfolio, so we need to make sure that it fits with what you're trying to accomplish. But as a starting point, this looks pretty darn good. Let's set up a time to talk. We will get back with you. Talk to you soon. Thanks.